In the vastness of Russia, the DAF CF worker from the Netherlands is still more in demand in the construction sector. Tipper bodies and concrete mixing plants are mounted on its chassis. However, truckers also like it, especially if we are talking not about international, but about domestic transportation. Subject to all the standards and requirements of transport workers, this is a kind of long-range economy class. With full structural authenticity with the flagship DAF XF105, it is more modest only in the size of the cabin, and they choose it for a successful symbiosis of comfort, reliability, and price. The CF comes standard with the preheater, but the filter separator is a custom item. If the car is not equipped with them, it is recommended to do this at a service station, since the filters themselves, the necessary harnesses and connectors are available in branded spare parts stores. From the extensive list of options for the DAF CF, carriers most often order fuel heating, some of them directly in the tank. Transport workers choose an autonomous liquid heater, rather than a dry hair dryer. This allows you to start the engine faster at low temperatures without overloading the battery and without resorting to the use of external power sources. In recent years, many Russian carriers have been installing tracking and satellite navigation systems on their trucks. The price of the issue of safety and efficiency of transportation is such that saving on such funds is more expensive for yourself. Some companies order systems for monitoring the level of fuel consumption, both DAF and other manufacturers. If a businessman intends to achieve maximum efficiency from the use of rolling stock, it is very difficult to achieve the desired result without such systems. Along with the top spoiler, truckers willingly take the side spoilers, because, along with improving the appearance, this gives fuel economy. A sun visor is a must. Additional headlights are an option for an amateur, and since we rarely have dense fogs, and dust storms are generally exotic, they are ordered quite rarely. Another thing is roof horns. Almost every client buys these attributes. In addition to beauty, it is also safety, and saving on it is a bad form. The Dutch truck really has many advantages both in a global sense, in terms of efficiency of use and minimization of costs, and in particular, in terms of successful design solutions. For example, with proper care, he does not have streaks of technical fluids, which, for example, are sent by the motors of some domestic manufacturers. The suspension does not rattle and the springs do not crack. And the demand for springs for tractors is low. Only 2 such parts were sold through official service points in the capital region during the year. True, leaf suspension elements are in demand for dump trucks much more often, due to the same overload. A big advantage is the interchangeability of a number of DAF parts. Let's say the brake pads for CF, LF, XF are the same. And since the thing is consumable, often in demand, and both CF and XF are found in fleets, the benefit is obvious. In addition to the pads on DAF models, the front and rear hubs are unified, regardless of the type of vehicle. It is a tractor, chassis, or dump truck. The hubs are maintenance-free, so they are bought quite often. The CF has almost the same chassis as the big brother XF. Attachments, 1-to-1, no changes. The difference is that its cabin is slightly narrower than the flagship, although the working space, not to be confused with the total volume, is the same. The motor shaft was removed on the flagship, and in the CF its height is 440 millimeters. There is also a difference in the dimensions of the sleeping shelves. They are more modest than on the executive version. But for rest on the way, the conditions are acceptable. Threaded connections and factory painting of the frame do not require additional care. That is, there is no need to cover vulnerable spots with anti-corrosive or protect bolts with grease. The cabin is provided with a 10-year manufacturer's warranty against perforation corrosion. Prudent carriers treat it with an anti-corrosion compound once every 3 years. But who, at the end of the leasing period, intends to sell equipment? As a rule, this is neglected. And in vain. Experienced drivers advise not to start the hardware and, if scratches and chips to the metal appear, treat the damaged areas with Mobil. Russian carriers do not know of problems with AdBlue, since they do not order such cars, and there are no such vehicles among used cars imported from the EU yet. Otherwise, the strengths and weaknesses of the DAF CF are known. Among the strengths is the problem-free cab suspension on silent blocks. They are non-lubricated, pressed, and therefore reliable. The advantage is the minimum number of tricky electronic systems that are capricious in severe frosts, in heat and high humidity. One could say that the unpretentious nature of the Dutchman does not leave an imprint on its operation in Russia, but this is not so. The plant has established that for engines of the MX family, the maintenance norm is an interval of 35,000 kilometers. The catch is that Russian carriers consider it small and seek by hook or by crook to increase it. Hence the problems with reliability, since the free interpretation of the manufacturer's instructions actually reduces the resource of automotive components and assemblies, and expensive ones. Talk about almost twice as long intervals for DAF trucks in Europe is nothing more than fiction. The plant clearly prescribes recommendations: 40,000 kilometers for Euro 4 engines with AdBlue components and 35,000 kilometers for everyone else. With regard to special equipment, the standards are even tougher: 37,000 kilometers and even 20,000 kilometers, depending on operating conditions. By the way, with all the carriers who bought Dutch trucks from the VHDAF company, a kind of educational program is carried out, on which the prescribed norms and standards are brought up. Without fail, customers are advised on after-sales service and warned that in case of violation of the recommendations of the factory, the car is removed from warranty service. So consider what is more profitable for you. CF is convenient for self-service, which is confirmed by the practice of its use in Chita, Krasnoyarsk, Barnaul, Novosibirsk, and other cities of the country. It is only important not to overdo it. And then after all, there are examples of an incompetent approach. Recently, for example, one carrier went over the motor on its own, and after starting it cut off the camshaft key. Savings went sideways. And such examples, alas, are lacking. The correct choice of the aggregate base also affects the efficiency and non-failure operation. For example, some carriers buy a truck with a 340 horsepower engine, which is ideal for urban conditions with a small load, and start operating it in mountainous areas with a load of more than 20 tons. And for these cases, a more powerful engine is needed. It seems to be a common truth, but not everyone observes it. But those who approach the choice in a business-like way are satisfied. So, since January 2008, a batch of DAF CF 85.340 dump trucks with an insulated cab has been operating on the Yamal Peninsula. The first cars had XE engines, now MX. Instead of an 8-speed manual transmission, a 16-speed one from ZF is now used. There are no comments on the CP. And in general, the technique has shown reliability. In less than half a year, out of 33 cars, only one center differential flew, and even that was due to improper use of the lock. The fact is that carriers do not read the instruction manual, and usually they turn on the lock on the rise, when the car does not pull out, and it is absolutely impossible to do this on the go. As a result, the divider breaks. The price of an error is from 14.5 to 17,000 euros per differential. In the basic equipment of CF for Russia, an Ederspaker dryer, on request, Webasto, with the power of up to 4 kilowatts is supplied. Some prefer the option in the form of a wet stove with the power of up to 9 kilowatts in maximum mode. It warms the engine well, only the battery eats up decently. And who forgets about it? After a night of parking it may not start. The harsh nature of the road and climatic conditions leaves its mark on the operation of DAF CF vehicles in Russia. Most of these problems are unfamiliar to European carriers, but for ours they are always relevant. One of the most characteristic troubles is overload. This approach to making money at any cost is fraught with inevitable problems with the rear springs. It is only a matter of time before the metal fails to withstand the increased stresses, cracks, and eventually bursts. As practice shows, on FAD CF85, 8x4, dump trucks, the same main sheet breaks, and always in the same place. And what is surprising, the owners of the rolling stock themselves provoke drivers to overload the cars. According to them, the price of a spring is nothing compared to the calculation for the transported volume of bulk cargo. Due to sudden changes in average daily temperatures and an abundance of dirt on the roads, problems with the brake system periodically arise. Under the influence of moisture and mechanical particles, wheel discs warp and crack. Due to the presence of abrasive on the working surface, the pads quickly wear out and become unusable. Dry dirt spoils the springs and ultimately reduces braking efficiency. There are differential failures. There are cases when this part was changed several times on the same machine. During the warranty period, a new viscous coupling was installed several times instead of a damaged one. There are problems with the crane modulator of the front axle. It is difficult to say what is more here, driver bungling or factory flaws, but the facts, as they say, have a place to be. Russian carriers cannot escape the low quality of fuel. Only for one inspection of the capital's gas stations in May, 7 gas stations were fined in excess of 4 million rubles. And this is in Moscow, where supervisory authorities are nearby and inspectors can turn up at any moment. Imagine regional columns where no inspector has set foot in years. Due to the unsatisfactory quality of diesel fuel on the DAF CF, the low-pressure fuel pump fails. It does not tolerate large amounts of water in the presence of sulfur. Meanwhile, the replacement of the pumping section according to the norms of service stations takes 2.5 hours of work, which is about 1,200 rubles. Of course, experienced specialists can perform this operation on their own in just 40 minutes, but not all carriers have the necessary knowledge and skills. There are troubles caused by the exceptionally negligent nature of drivers and their poor professional training. Other aces manage to burn the clutch on a segment of 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers. A characteristic trouble of the machine, the failure of the 4-circuit dryer tap, is mainly caused by the untimely replacement of the oil moisture separator filter. With exact observance of the replacement intervals during maintenance, there are no failures in operation. There are moments that do not seem to have a direct impact on the efficiency of cargo transportation, but can work like a time bomb. A typical example is the maintenance of a car in artisanal conditions. Suppose the carrier complies with the recommended oil and filter change interval, but not at the company station, but in its fleet. Everything is fine, but in this case the machine is deprived of computer diagnostics of all systems and assemblies. Electronic codes of errors and malfunctions that the driver is not able to recognize on his own are not read. As a result, the car can simply stand on the track. As they say, with all the consequences. Operating experience in areas with a harsh climate has shown that at air temperatures below -42, there are problems with the electrics. In particular, the wiring is dubbed, and sometimes even in the bundle it breaks due to vibrations. The second nuance is related to the contacts in the places of the connectors. Due to the ingress of sand, salt, road chemicals, the tightness of the contacts is broken, moisture penetrates, and the oxidation process takes place. True, the plant has changed something in the design. For example, in the manufacture of insulation for electrical wiring, not plastic is used, but a more elastic material. But equipment suppliers recommend not to make a mistake themselves. If the central unit is well protected from the ingress of dirt and moisture, then the accessible connectors should be periodically checked visually and, if necessary, removed and cleaned. This applies to the ECAS sensor, rear light connectors and side reflectors. In principle, this applies to daily maintenance.